Hello, and thank you all for coming. I wanted to thank you who contributed so much to our last meeting out at Chavonne's ranch that ended up also being my birthday party. So thank you very, very much for those of you who contributed to that. I also wanted to remind you that Sunday, the 13th, is the Old Timers Barbecue in Lancaster. The doors open at 11. I got Kelly and Joe who are going to help me set up because we're going to have a table. If anybody else wants to come and help set up, the benefit of setting up and sort of helping out there is they will serve you food. You still have to pay for it, but they will bring it to you, and so you don't have to stand in this long line that everybody else does. But anyway, the doors open at 11, and lunch starts to be served at 12. And it's really fun. Another benefit of being there is the AV Rural Museum will be open. And if you've not ever seen that, it is amazing. Those people have done an incredible job. So it's very much worth seeing. And the last little thing I was going to mention, several people have asked me about it. We're still working on trying to get a building for a museum, but things are a little complicated. The Community Services District is a public entity, and the rules and regulations governing public entities are rigorous. And so there are complications, but we're still working. I guess one more thing I needed to also tell you is the library was kind enough to open the bathrooms for us, so you don't have to go ask. They're open if you need them. And I think that's the limit of my list of things. So without further ado, Chavonne.
Okay, I'm behind you.
You're behind me?
It'll reach over there.
Okay.
We're going to do tonight a little bit different. We would like to open it up to comments and interpretation from the audience. What Anne found as she was going through this was that there's very little written history on Rosamond Elementary. And in sorting through boxes of old newspapers, she went out and got spider bit for a little bit of sympathy on top of it. So her pointer finger is out of commission.
No, it's not.
But we really want you guys to participate, to share, to go, oh, I remember this, I remember that. And one of the things that I would like to do is I would like to eventually have a book of children's games, children's jump rope rhymes, that kind of stuff that we can have at the elementary school as well. So if you remember playing Mother May I, what were the rules? What were the rules for red light, green light? Were you allowed to play marbles at school? What were the rules for that? And so those types of things. So I'd like for you to be thinking about that. We'd like to compose that. So without further ado, we're going to have Anne. And like I said, it's going to kind of be a sharing back and forth.
Good morning, good afternoon, whatever we are. I could say it like Doreen Zaker used to say. After every morning announcement, Doreen would say at the end, and now you'll learn, Doreen, that her office staff would almost be able to keep the tone of which Doreen spoke. All of our mouths would move at the same time, and she would say a whole thing on behavior and a hero that displayed that kind of character we were looking for that particular month. And then she would say, have a good day, or not, the choice is yours. And we would just be able to, she would just say it in such a pattern all of the time. And
Am I going to bother you?
can't verify that, right? She does that. Well, I am so blessed to be able to talk about Rosamond Elementary, not so much about the history of how it was built I mean, I know when it was built, and she's 92 years old.
Wow.
That's a long time for a single building to house so many children. And I used to love to tell Chavonne, my favorite time at Rosamond Elementary was early in the morning before anyone would get there. And I would open the door. Sometimes it would still be dark outside. And I was never seemed to be afraid. Nobody ever seemed to bother you there.
Lights off? Sure. I don't
But I can remember thinking, boy, if these walls could speak. What stories they would tell about children, about teachers' devotion, about community, and just to be able to imagine all of those things became such an emotional part of what Rosamond Elementary was to me. And as people would retire or teachers would come in and come and go, you'd always just be able to think, the sidewalks were absolutely smooth from all the little feet that scuffled, and sometimes you could just imagine rows of little children, perfect straight lines with their little bunny ears up, which meant to be quiet. And all of the students that had passed there, and in just my time, being able to see people that I went to school with, and then their children go there, and then their children go there. It just is an amazing place of community, Rosamond Elementary. So I will tell you this, Rosamond was built in 1927, and but there was a previous Rosamond Elementary School, and there were pictures that we found at district office. They don't look a thing like Rosamond Elementary to us, so we were having trouble figuring whether or not these were original, a school site somewhere else, or whether it was on that site. Nobody could remember. So if anybody has any idea, that's not written down, and there are no papers in the district office that say any or tell any stories of the original
And I think
building.
the original school was more over on 35th Street, because we have, the Historical Society has some pictures of that.
So
Before
that would be
before
wonderful.
the Rosamond, the one that you now have is Rosamond Elementary was built.
Right, and I've got some of those, Gretchen, and we'll go back and kind of see if we can't sequence this a little bit.
Okay.
That would be really nice, because when we've asked for oral history, we've gotten a lot of everyone's stories, but they don't seem to be anything before J.A. Lawson, the colorful J.A. Lawson. So those things really do need to be written down and kept as a history of the building. So this week I was able to talk to Maurice Turner, who is now 89 years old, and just had wonderful stories of people and loved reminiscing about those times. And to Mike Richardson, who I tell you, every time I talk to him, he uses those big words, and I think, sure, I got that. But he was remembering and telling stories of different people, J.A. Lawson and of Wanda Kirk, who hired him, and Mark Celine, and Oscar Lindstrom, and so many different names of people I can remember, but not really remember. I didn't know. I did remember that we had a superintendent after J.A. Lawson by the name of Tolbert, and then came Mashburn, and then Mr. Celine took the job because it needed to be filled, but he really didn't want to. And then O'Neill, and then Shear, and then Richardson, and then Hoffman, Van Norman, Taylor, Weinstein, Hargis, and I don't know what the new one's name is. Anyone out there?
Games.
Barbara Gaines.
Barbara Gaines. Okay. I was fortunate. I worked for 13 principals, and some of them will forever be precious to me, and some of them I remember their names, and that's good enough. But there was, for me, Mr. Contemo is who hired me for Rosamond Elementary, and Mr. Richardson came, Mr. Van Norman, Mrs. Chase was an intermediate principal, Mr. Campstra, Mr. Fikert, Mr. Eubanks, Mrs. Zaker, Mr. Croy, Miss Buxton, Mr. Luckenbill, Miss Buxton again, Miss Hargis, and Mr. Torres. So there was lots, and they came in, and they left, and teachers came and retired, and some of them left spots in our memories that we just can't forget. I worked many years with Yolanda Sanchez, and those were blessed years. We had some really fun times in that office.
And some that they shouldn't have had that were pretty fun.
Those usually included Chavonne. I like to think about the people that made Rosamond Elementary special. For me, my very favorite person I got to have kind of take me under their wing and remind me often that we truly were servants of children and community, and how blessed we were to have that job, was Joni McKee. And you can say name now, and some people say who, but for those of us that knew her, what a blessing that was, because she never had an 8-hour job. She would be there first thing in the morning. She would be there late at night. If there was a new teacher, she was telling them how it rolled. And she truly was the heartbeat of Rosamond Elementary for as long as I can remember. I look out and see her sidekick, Eunice, and think Eunice was in the office for a while with Mrs. Turner. And the lessons that we learned from people who had the job before us help us to remember to be humble and kind and good to people. But I think talking to lots of people in the community, to Mike Richardson, to so many, that all of it always managed to go back to what a wonderful community Rosamond was. As far as the school was really just the heartbeat of the community. Everything was done for that school. Parent volunteers were such a big part. You don't see that anymore. They had the sports booster, and Reggie Graves today reminded me that the team never went out of town when they were not fed, not by their own pocket money, because parents didn't have a lot of money. The sports boosters made sure that the coaches had money in their pocket to pay for those students' meals. And that they, as players, were there to represent the community that they lived in, not just athletes, but the community that they lived in. And the sports boosters were always there to make sure that there wasn't much they didn't need. They raised the money for the teams, not the students. And then there was PTA, which is totally different. Our PTA had pretty much gone by the time I left, and it was starting to make its way back, but it's not like it used to be. We used to give out the cards, remember, in September, and if your class had so many PTA moms today for you, you got an ice cream party. That doesn't really happen anymore. And so it's a different kind of thing. And I will tell you, the very best fundraiser Rosamond Elementary ever had was Doreen Zaker. Nobody could work those vendors or whatever they were that would meet with her. She'd go, no, we're going to have this percent or we're not having it. And we're like, oh my goodness. And she would bring in just huge amounts, but she wouldn't allow it to go on all year. She would do one? Just one. And you'd think, oh my goodness. It would go on all night long, parents picking up tubs of cookie dough. Again, here we go. No, I got this. And she could organize that cafeteria, Halsey Auditorium, like no one you've ever seen. And so when you think about the walls of Rosamond Elementary and the 16 original little classes, by time we left Rosamond Elementary, by the time I left Rosamond Elementary, there were 34 classes. the 16 original, and then the rest were portable buildings that were brought in.
You want to kind of point out those 16 original ones?
The 16 original ones were here. Room 1 was a kindergarten room.
Whoops, I guess I do want to point, sorry.
And the kindergarten room, how many, is there anybody here that went to kindergarten there?
Pressure right there.
So this is room 1.
You went to kindergarten there? Gracie Sladek went to kindergarten. Room 1, that was a very big room, very big. And sometimes on rainy days, all of the kindergarten classes would go in there for a movie into that one room. And it had bathrooms. And my husband always tells me of the story of he didn't come home from school one day and they couldn't find him. And his mother went to the school and she still couldn't find him. And he'd gone to the bathroom and the teacher left for the day and locked him in. He didn't like room 1. He had a real problem with that room. But so then the next row of classes ran from the street end, and that was room 4, room 2, 3, and 4 was on the hall. And then it went down, and was a little bathroom.
This little bathroom right here.
And the classrooms in those original 16 buildings were big, and they had, and so they were solid rooms. And then on the next wing over, that was the same. Those ran to room 5 to 10. Right. So 5 would be here, and then 10 was at the end, and then room 12 was the next building to room 16. Those were the original classrooms. And then there was a hallway that ran to the office.
So this was the hallway and this was the office.
Mm-hmm. And then this is a picture from a long time ago because the sidewalk or the front entrance didn't look like that anymore. But then Halsey was behind.
And that was Halsey what?
Auditorium.
Auditorium.
Mm-hmm. And Halsey Auditorium for the community of Rosamond was always open. So the Boy Scouts used it, and the Masons used it for installations, and the Kiwanis Club had activities in there. That was always
4-H
just
used it.
such. Who used it?
4-H.
4-H, that's right. It was the meeting hall, and it was also set up as the first aid spot for anything east of the railroad and behind on Camden. That was used was listed as the emergency place for the town. It had its own well, and eventually, I don't know when it went on the water system, but it did have a well for a long time. The tree there was planted for a little girl named Teresa Nace who had an appendix burst, and that tree fell in the late 90s.
And I was thinking maybe it was a different tree, but there was one that was planted when we were praying about 6th grade for, I think it was Jerry Creech. But
I think that one stood over here, though, just a little.
maybe.
No?
Okay.
I might
No,
be
it was
wrong.
it was in line with the cafeteria. I remember when we stood out there and had the ceremony for it.
Was it that one then? Maybe it
Well,
was.
yeah, I
There
thought,
is a
but-
list of all of the trees that were planted and who they were planted for. I don't know what happened to the list when they
And
moved.
I do remember something about the girl you named.
Yeah.
Yeah, that something. Yeah. So
And-
I don't know which one is which.
And then there was another pine in the front that was planted for Sammy Davis.
For who?
Samantha Davis, I believe.
Oh.
Ina's niece.
Ina, are you here?
My brother Charlie's daughter.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then there's just, so for the students, those are the 2 trees that I ever knew of that were planted for students. There were several trees later planted for Mr. Campstra and one for Joni McKee. That
The one
was
for
up
Joni
front.
would be right here.
And then one for Alma Payne that always stood just in the center over by what would have been, I don't know, north of the library. And those still stood. We have a fun picture of Ina Scott when a big tree for Mrs. Bohannon blew down. We put Halloween socks on Ina Scott and made her lay under the tree because it happened in October, and we have just the best pictures. And there were all kinds of fun memories of things that went on at the school and at the site, that went on in the evenings. And like I said, a lot had to do with community involvement. The school was always open. Now they charge a fee to use it. They did not charge a fee for years. We just constantly, it was used all the time. Boy Scout troops would start at 3:30 and end at, I don't know, 8 or 9. It seemed like it was always going on. But now that doesn't happen anymore, sad, but it doesn't happen. We had Kiwanis involved back then with the reading ribbons, and for years they sponsored those. And the Women's Club used to do a kindergarten social at the end of the school year with the kindergartners, and a walk to the park. We don't take them off campus very much anymore. There was just so much involvement community-wise with the schools and with the principals. The principals' jobs didn't end early in the day. They would be there late into the evening. I think of some really things that characterize different principals. Mr. Kamstra was a principal that always kind of seemed out of place with the little kids. He loved them. He truly did. He was the principal I will always associate as technology. He brought in the computers, and he always was researching games or finding out new ways to help the school district become better in technology. And then there was Mr. Fikert, who brought in a lot of fun because he had all these young ideas, and he was a lot of fun, but not organized. Then came Mr. Eubanks, who Mr. Eubanks was so much fun because we would always tell him, no, you're wrong here, let us do it right. And then he'd say, no, I'm right. And I'd say, no, you're wrong. And if we're right, then you'll have to buy us Sundays. And we would always just make him believe he was wrong. But he always bought us Sundays. And then came Mrs. Zaker, and I'm a little bit prejudiced because, you know, she was she was my neighbor too. But most certainly, she brought in organization, and she pulled a ragtag group of parents and kids, and you know, we went from assemblies that I was like, oh, today's student of the month, yay, hooray. You know, it's going to be a nightmare. And it just would go like this, so nice, okay, we're going to have a picture time right now, but you wait, sit down. It's not your turn. Okay, now you can come up. And it was just, she had a way with parents that was able to cause some real order, and whenever anybody would get all worked up, she had a way to make you go, okay, that's enough. And you knew. She reminded me quickly that there were 3 levels. It started with her, then the teachers, and then me. And often I needed to be put in my place and be reminded that that was the order. And she would just have, I love this game. Anyone who knows Pilar Salazar, she could keep you going, and I love her to death. But Doreen said, or she put a little sign on her desk, and it said, I forget. Oh, you'll be treated as you treat others. And Doreen was always about lowering the tone, keeping it quiet, keeping it soft voice turns away wrath. And so she said, Pilar, I want you to take that down. Pilar said, no, I don't want to. They need to learn. And she'd say, Pilar, I want you to take that down. So Pilar, being obedient to Mrs. Zaker, takes the note, lowers it about 6 inches. She goes, there you go. That's just the kind of fun things that we would have go on in our office. The one thing I think I will remember as the saddest day I ever worked at Rosamond Elementary and that was 9/11. But I was amazed at the community because you had a time then when parents immediately rushed to campus, not so much to take their children, but to see how they could help. And teachers that just amazed me at how they so protected those children. And when instead of going into the teacher's lounge that morning, they were meeting parents at the gate and taking their children and assuring them that they were going to take care of their children that day. That year, that particular day, we didn't have a principal. Mr. Fikert had left, and we had interns coming over and helping from district office. We had a wonderful staff then, and they all just seemed, there was no lead person in charge of making sure things went well. They all just amazingly worked well. Parents that teachers trusted to help them gather kids. We didn't check IDs or anything. And we had phone calls from so many campuses. Fikert called, and Mr. Johnson stopped by, and then when Mr. Van Orman was available, all of these people checked all day. But I was so very touched and impressed with the community and with the teachers that Rosamond Elementary had that day, and the importance of keeping themselves safe. And then things changed, and gates went up, and security buzzers went in, and parents weren't allowed to come to school anymore. And they talk about how children have changed it, and I think maybe there are things good about keeping all of those safety features in mind. But there's something really sad about us not being able to have those parent volunteers there. Parents that just want to come in and listen to kids read. Teachers that would just love the opportunity to have them go run some papers off. Those are sad, and it's a changed system now. And while I understand it, I do believe that it's really changed the face of education. It's a rough job, and I think the importance or the value of teachers has changed, and how we see them. What an amazing sacrificial life teachers have, and I say that with a full heart. I mean that. I've watched, I don't know how many weekends teachers coming and going and staying till the late night, and that was across the board. But I think back how thankful we were as a staff together that we could always count on the other people being there too. And I really don't have anything more to say.
More pictures.
As I'm looking out and about, if you attended Rosamond Elementary, would you stand up?
Attended Rosamond Elementary.
All right, and I'll have you have a seat. If you worked for at Rosamond Elementary at any point in time, could I have you stand up? And so you see this continuity in the community. We wanted to go through, this was the plaque that is in front of Halsey Auditorium. And this plaque talks about the school in 1955. And then we also had a plaque there that was presented for Wanda Kirk, and it was done, I believe, in bronze, right? And it was very, very expensive. And so the rule was that unless you had taught for 40 years, you wouldn't get a bronze plaque. And so Wanda Kirk got that. But as we were looking at pictures and history and trying to pull this together, in front of
Yeah.
what would be Halsey Auditorium right here is where the bell was. Okay? And anybody have a story about the significance of the bell?
You couldn't touch it,
You were definitely not allowed to touch it. You weren't supposed to try and make it ring.
but I did it.
And the
Wait a
bell
minute.
was in front
said
of
desert,
Halsey
didn't you?
Auditorium, but that was not
I just.
Dover Halsey. Halsey was our understanding. It was
I
his
haven't seen you, but
father.
I know. what it
Anybody
is.
know any of the correlation in between the Halsey family, the senior end,
He's
and the
in one of
cafeteria?
He's in one of the early yearbooks, the picture of the dad.
Okay, and we did
And so
find
it tells-
something where he was on one of the
On the board?
original school boards. Didn't know if anybody had any other information.
That's just, and there's nothing, unless we go to Bakersfield, that might tell. There's nothing written down.
So this would be Halsey Auditorium. I don't know if anybody knows where there's the big long wooden shutters in the auditorium. Who may have made those?
They were always there.
Well, they weren't born there.
Yeah, they were. But look here, see, for as long as I can remember, I don't know about the rest of you, but the bell looks like it's sitting on the ground. But the bell was always on a,
It was on a stand on a, with
Right.
a cement, brick
right,
up off the ground, and a brick.
forever. And then, and that doesn't appear to be on anything.
Did the bell get taken? Is it not there?
The bell structure broke, and so the bell has been taken away. And I don't, the last
And
I
nobody
heard-
knows where it is
Well,
right now.
Raleigh does, Raleigh knew where the bell was, and so as long as Raleigh's there, I think the bell's safe. That's what we're hoping.
Well, we better figure it out.
We
Yeah.
better figure it out. It should
Figure it
be,
out.
I think it should be mounted at the, in a nice place forever.
Or just
Yeah.
sit there?
The bell hung,
Yeah.
and you could, it actually.
And it had, you were supposed to, but you could make,
All you
that
did
little
was
wheel
pull,
thing
it had
and
like
make
a
it,
big wheel.
Oh, yeah,
it was on a wheel.
And if you pulled
Like
the
a-
wheel, it would go.
It would go. And if you were, too close, you might get in trouble because they'd know you were the one.
You were the one, yeah. And it had quite the,
What? You never?
that's good. And the one thing too,
You, of course not.
Mr. Bell was a custodian there.
First,
And
the nicest.
the nicest, Mr. Bell planted a garden, a rose garden. And the story is that he would clip these roses. Sally Ann Newman told me. He would clip a rose, and he would take it to a teacher in the morning and say, "A rose for a rose." And if you got there early and you were a good student, you got to help Mr. Bell pull the flag up. And that was quite the job. That was quite the pulley. Mr. Bell was the custodian. He was the gardener. He mowed the lawns. He put up the flag, and he left in the evenings. And the key, we used to have a laugh. We knew you were not naturally born to Rosamond if you didn't have a 490 of your own. If you had to ask me for a key, you aren't an original. So, because the community, lots of people just had a key, right, Mrs. Baker? I mean, it just was. You had a key, and you might have to say, "Oh man, I thought our group had a key to Halsey Auditorium, but we haven't been able to find it." Well, they didn't go crazy and change the lock. They just got another key. I don't know. But that was constantly going. But Mr. Bell was just the nicest black man. And I don't think any of us ever saw color. We just saw the nicest, quietest, gentlest man, with always a smile on his face. And so when the rose garden started to die, the roses got old, and they were like, "We're going to dig these things up." Oh my goodness, no! Those that remember Mr. can't touch Mr. Bell's rose garden. So I don't even know how many are original, but when one died, we replanted it.
And I don't think there are any roses any longer in front of the cafeteria. I think they've let that all go.
Well, that's sad.
And so this section was part of the historical pictures that we found. And we believe, and if anybody's got anything different, that, this area right here would be room 234. This would be the hallway going into the office, or towards the office.
Right.
And this would be where the bathrooms are.
Because
Does anybody?
that gas tank's still there. So it looks similar to that, but the windows look different. But when we used to call that, when Yolanda and I were there, we would call those the dungeon, because we stored all the attendance records and old cumulative files. Originally, those two windows would have been where when the school was a K-8 school, there were showers in there.
Showers.
And so then the shower things were all gone, and we used it for storage, and we used to hate the dungeon.
We never used the showers, but I remember that when we were getting ready to move Hamilton away, and they were talking about different places to go, one of the principals was trying to say we should go up to Rosamond Elementary, and that would be the middle school. And we had showers in there for PE, and there were like 2. And I thought, you don't make all the kids shower in 2 showers. That I did, but I can remember him talking about that.
Yeah.
So Janet, this was a K-8
Well,
at that time?
I don't remember it ever being,
It wasn't, it was only K-8.
it would have had to go to 8 though, somewhere before Tropico.
It did,
before
yeah.
Hamilton.
Gretchen,
Yeah.
you're shaking your head,
Yeah.
yes?
It was a K-8.
Yeah.
You would have to, because Tropical, and even Hamilton wasn't there, so
It was K-8.
it
was
had to,
K-8
it had to.
when Mike,
But even in 59, it was K6.
Yeah,
and then it went K, so then Tropico opened up, and it's been used for a million different things, and sometimes it's been closed.
Tropico opened first as the country school. Rosamond Elementary was the elementary school. I think all the kindergartners, town school, all the kindergartners went there, but all the 1st through 6th went out to Tropico, that lived out in the country. Then they switched it, so it was like 1st, 2nd, and 3rd together, I guess, at Rosamond Elementary, and 4th to 6th out at Tropico. I believe that was the breakdown.
And then, then we went to the middle school, and the middle
Right,
school
right.
took 6, 7, 8. So,
7th and 8th.
Different
but
ways.
there was a time when even 3rd grade went
Yes.
to Tropico.
Yes.
So it's been, depending on enrollment, it's
Yeah.
been a little bit everywhere, and none of that's written down. That's what's so sad. We couldn't find, we were remembering different things that went on, and we were talking about how people can remember the different styles of education that have gone through the school, and total reading, and then AR reading, and all of these different kinds of math, and all that's gone, and tracking, remember tracking, homogeneous, whatever it was.
So
Tracking.
this would have been before the kindergarten room was
Right.
built, right? I didn't.
Okay, is there anybody that went to school through 8th grade here? Okay,
You mean at that?
at this school site, at Rosamond
Been older
Elementary?
than me, for sure.
Okay. Anybody that went to 7th grade there? 6th grade? Okay, so we got already. So at that point in time, when you guys were in 6th grade here, was kindergarten through 5th grade there as well?
Kindergarten and.
Yeah.
Morning kindergarten was in town, and afternoon kindergarten was out of towners. All
Okay.
kindergarten went there.
But all of kindergarten through 6th grade was there?
Yes.
Okay, because when I went through, 1st and 2nd grade was out at Tropico.
Right.
And then I did 3rd and 4th at Rosamond Elementary. And then I did 5th and 6th at Tropico. So I was never part of Rosamond Elementary being a K6. So it was a K6 when you guys were in there. When you guys were as a K-6, then was Tropico in existence other than just the kindergarten?
It was first through sixth for out-of-towners.
For out-of-towners.
We didn't have that bus driving.
Sure, when Kent started, it was teaching there in '77, it was a K-6 and Tropical was closed.
Right.
Okay.
At that time, and then they opened it 2 years later, and then you went there, and they had fifth and sixth one out there. But I know that you're right, they changed it around a number of times.
enough that we didn't need it.
Yeah, Tropico was closed for a few years.
We actually trying to sell it.
And, well, and
Yeah.
it was even used as a Miss Pickering's special ed classes were out there for a little while. So it's
So
had lots
those
of
of you that were K-6 here, when you were there, was the room 1 on the playground?
That's what she's asking.
On the kindergarten playground.
On the kindergarten playground?
Yeah, it was separate from the other playground.
Well,
There
the
was like a
reason-
fence that
Okay,
separated the kindergarten from the first and second graders, third, fourth, and fifth.
So is there anybody that went to school here that did not, that was here before that kindergarten building was built?
Because the argument we're asking is we were trying to find this out for history. Somebody knew and told, because one of the reasons they justified tearing down that kindergarten room, which to us made no sense, was because it was not one of the original classrooms. And I can never remember when it wasn't there.
But in this picture, it's not, so it must have been built
true,
later.
And that's how they said
But
they were.
when
They
we
had to
came
take
to
down
Rosamond-
one of the old
When we
ones.
came to Rosamond, it was there.
What year was that?
About 55, 56, 50.
Okay, and so then the Tehachapi earthquake took place in what year?
52.
52.
And everyone said that
Yeah, I thought it was 53. I just remember.
Mr. Williams, for those that.
Oh.
Back when a neighborhood school really was where everybody rode their bike. But,
And Mr. Williams had 2 dogs. One of them always rode in the basket, but they always came to work with him. Do you remember? Always
Always.
came to work with him and helped some cross children.
Okay, now this came up being listed under the school district's part as being part of Rosamond School.
It is, because you see the hallway.
So this would have been where?
Facing Rosamond Park.
Facing Rosamond Park?
Yes, there was a little house that was district office for some time. Before
Right.
then, the district office was actually on Glendower property.
So if this was,
And wasn't it used as a continuation school for a while, I know?
It was,
It
yeah,
was.
but in those pictures that you're looking at, it was the storage rooms.
Ma'am,
okay, so if this was the district office facing the park,
no, could I say something?
please,
Those 2 classrooms were second grade.
these
was-
were second grade.
Yeah, it was just north or west of the school. And they moved them out to the other field.
Whoops, sorry, one more time.
Those were second grade. And the kindergarten was under the auditorium.
Okay.
And then they tore that building down after the earthquake, and they built the other one. So, no, that was, one of them was second grade, it could have been third grade, but they was west of the school.
Okay.
Right where those trees, right there, is where the playground was.
Alrighty.
During the summer, didn't they have arts and crafts in
Yes.
those buildings also?
And after school programs.
On summer school, they did arts and crafts, and they would play stuff. I remember.
right.
Summer school was
It was out, and we got to play with clay and
Yeah.
there.
Kids were doing craft stuff.
That's when you went to summer school for fun. And you wanted to. That's where all of us that are we learned to swim out at Arby's, and on Friday, it was always free swim, you could do whatever you want.
And who remembers that this is what we don't know, because there's no references to why there's no bell tower there at Rosamond Elementary. And it doesn't even look like, other than, if you look at the hallways, even in front of the office there's still those walls, brick walls. But that's not how the roof is.
Well, that's on the yearbook in 1953, because Byron gave me a copy off the cover of his Sage in 1953. I sent it to you guys.
Yes.
And that's that building, but because of the earthquake, they had to demolish a lot of it because of the Tehachapi earthquake.
Gretchen, all of this would have come down in the earthquake, all of these arches.
That, I don't know how much they demolished, but they had to demolish a lot of it. Byron could probably tell you, because he was going to school in 53 here, so.
Was there somebody that was going to school in 53?
I was.
You were. Okay.
Yeah.
What year would you have started school?
I was in kindergarten, I think, 52.
52. So do you remember the earthquake?
I was asleep, it was in the morning.
Yeah.
But that right there, the big building is the cafeteria. And
Okay, so this big building back here would have been the cafeteria?
yeah, right. And that building behind the cafeteria is the class rooms we was talking about.
The ones you just saw in the picture?
Yeah.
So this would have been those classes back here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is,
Okay, so this would have been, those classrooms would have been facing west?
yeah, right,
East?
right.
West, facing west?
Pardon?
Those classes would have been facing west towards the freeway?
No,
What is now the freeway?
This right here is Rosamond Boulevard.
So right here is Rosamond Boulevard?
Yeah. The classrooms, the doors would be facing the east towards the building. And on the other side of those trees was a playground. And kindergarten was in the basement of the auditorium. Then they tore it down because of the earthquake, and then built that other classroom about kindergarten.
Okay, so this right here would have been the auditorium
Yeah, right,
with a basement
yeah,
for kindergartners.
yeah. And the library was down there too.
Anybody else, this is the first time you've heard this?
Yeah.
Wow, thanks.
And these are the things we're trying to get so that we have a history, so we can write them down and because we have pictures that don't make sense.
Yeah.
The buildings never looked like that. Anybody here ever saw the buildings look like that?
No.
And I was always told that the buildings held up pretty good in the 52
Yeah,
earthquake. Well, it doesn't sound like
No.
it.
Okay, so now,
I was just going to say, in general, that's when the laws changed regarding brick buildings in Southern California, was the 53 Tehachapi earthquake. So even like when I was at Hollywood High and stuff, they tore down what looked like a perfectly good sturdy building because it was brick. And so they probably, if that was brick, they probably got around,
And they
replacing
made
it.
cement walls that were, what,
Right.
4 inches?
Right, so they had, because of the laws changed,
well,
construction.
I'm curious, to my knowledge, there was never any below ground anything in Rosamond. So did anybody else have a basement?
There was a basement on a farm right behind the railroad tracks.
Uh-huh.
There used to be an
The
old
municipal-
farmhouse basement down there.
Well, and the
like
old
a
post
cellar.
office, the one near what we call Johnson's Market, that used to be the post office in the old Angel House. We called it Angel House.
Yeah, the Angel House had
Reggie's
a
house
basement.
had a basement.
Yeah.
Because it was
Great.
used as the post
And the
office.
It was the
Grace
rest
House?
of
Yeah, the
library.
one that was,
Yeah.
where, that had a,
And Tina's parents, the one on B Street, had a basement.
You know, over by Jones's?
Okay.
My grandparents had a house, an alfalfa ranch on Avenue 8, west of where we are now. That house had a basement. So it would have built a long time.
Well, yeah.
And Katie, the street Cougar, the Cougar Ranch had a basement in their house.
That's right.
So,
And
was this actually a fireplace? Do you remember?
I don't know. I was
It
in
looks more like a
kindergarten
fireplace,
then,
because
so.
look at the top thing, the little
Yeah.
cover.
So I was ready to say that can't possibly be a Rosamond Elementary, and it was.
Now, one of the other questions that kind of came up is this bell. You know, it seems strange to me that you would put a bell on a roller or on the ground or something.
As a kid, somebody said it was like a replica of the Liberty Bell, and I always thought it was because of the Liberty Bell that we had a bell here. I remember hearing that as a kid.
Would there have been a bell in here?
Well, maybe that's where it originated, I don't know. But the bell that we weren't allowed to touch, and of course, wouldn't have. Oh, right. But I always heard that it was a replica of the Liberty Bell. I don't know if that was true, but that's what I heard as a kid.
Do you remember a bell when you were a kid?
No, I don't.
Okay.
So it probably wasn't a bell tower.
I don't know.
Who knew there was a basement?
Who knew there was a fireplace?
it was a teacher's lounge, come on. Smoking cigarettes.
Anybody that's had a connection with Rosamond Elementary? Have you ever heard a story of a basement anywhere? All right. And then, so when the kids would have come to school, would they have entered right here or would they have entered here?
Well, you could enter both of them, but the gate was at the same place, you know.
There's no chimney on that one either.
Yeah,
Whatever it was.
The
Whatever it
chimney's
was.
either not there or already gone.
It may have been a vent of some sort.
Right, and none of these pictures had any dates, so there wasn't any frame of reference for us.
Siobhan, I
That's
sent you
true.
one that had a date on it.
You did
Right.
1915.
No, 29, I think.
Well, that building looks like it's older than the previous one because the trees aren't as big.
Ah, okay.
You look at that tree back there, it's really small.
Yeah, see,
You're right.
So if anybody here has an opportunity to just write down what they remember about the school site, that would really help us to have a little book to put together for the Historical Society, because nobody had any help for us.
And I think, you know, as someone who kind of likes to crop pictures down to where there's no background, as you're going through this, you start realizing the value of seeing a tree, seeing a mountain, getting perspective in there.
Well, it looks like in that one that's back up, if you see on the right side, it looks like the trees in the park. Keep going. Right there, see, onto your right. In the background, that's the park.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying that right here.
That's our hill and
Our
park.
mountain.
Yeah.
and there's the mountain. I mean, you can tell by it.
That's our mountain.
Doesn't it seem so much closer?
It is. That's what Byron told me. It was real close to Rosamond Boulevard.
Right. I
But,
remember putting that freeway in.
okay, so
Like where the
then,
kindergarten playground now.
It was a big deal. We'll get on the freeway and drive down.
right here, so this would have been the front
Yeah,
part of the school.
that's what it looks like.
There's
And
another
then this
picture-
would have
there's another
been
picture.
The bell tower.
the bell, what I'm calling the bell tower. And so, all of this was demolished in the 52 earthquake?
No, it wasn't demolished. They tore it down later because on Byron's book cover, it was 1953, so it still existed in 53, but then they had to tear it down because of the damage. I
Okay.
think, or potential for damage. So I think the whole thing got torn down.
Well, this part right here, Gretchen, is, those buildings are still the original buildings, correct?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? You
I don't think so.
those were- Okay,
Talk to Byron.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but talk to Byron.
alrighty, so then, based upon that, then if you go back to right here, this was April 30th of 1955.
I think that may have been when those buildings might have happened, but I'm not sure.
So, this one here, which has the
That was-
1927,
That was the original that we've just
The
been looking at.
original.
Yeah.
and so this would have been
The new.
the
The
rebuilding
re,
there.
the rebuilds, yeah.
Okay.
Why did they move that restoration fast?
I mean, I don't know. That's just,
3 years.
we need to do some more checking. Byron would be a really good source, so.
And you see right here, here are the names on there: Beyer, Randleman, Rainwater, Halsey, Berg.
Rainwater, I remember.
Well, that SL was Lilaberg, wasn't it?
Yes.
That's what
Yes.
everybody called her Lilaberg. but-
Yeah.
I remember that.
Miss Martha Randleman would be Sue Ogden's mom.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there you've got the
And district
Halsey
office, wasn't that the old Rainwater house?
out by Rusty Lancaster.
No, the house that district office took over,
That's
wasn't
where
that?
Lawson lived.
Lawson.
Oh.
When I was hired, he and his wife
Lived in
and
that.
daughter Janice were living in this house.
They didn't live out at the ranch?
No, they lived in this house in 62.
Oh.
And the ranch was built, I think, later.
Still in the 60s, though.
Yeah.
Okay, so then Gretchen, according to kind of your understanding, is that, whoops, sorry. Got old lady's fingers. That the original 1907 one would have been all demolished after the earthquake.
Wait, 1907, you're in the wrong.
1927.
27.
1927, sorry.
Yeah, that's what I understood Byron to say. But I may have, I mean, you know, we need to double check with him. But I think this might be Rosamond Boulevard. That's the dirt that you see here in the corner. So I think that's the kindergarten playground that we're looking at right now. And the next group of buildings go on further, the more modern ones, the ones.
But when you look right here,
Yeah, I
This
think
then-
it's in that, I think it's in that dirt area, but
Out in the grass area, the
Yeah, talk to
closer to the
Byron.
road.
It's closer to the road, I
so
believe.
the original one would have been maybe up here.
Well, that's my impression,
That's what-
but again, you need to check with,
It would
Okay.
be where RJ is.
Okay.
This side.
And
See that
then,
road
yeah,
turn?
and then we have yet a,
That road turns across the road.
okay, we would have
that's the Willow Springs.
the Willow Springs School,
Right, that's the one at Willow Springs.
and then that would have
That's
also been the
Willow
Willow
Springs. That's
Springs.
Willow Springs.
And then right here.
That's the
Jan-
one that I think is on 35th Street, that was on the
Okay.
Graves property.
And there's
But
the
it-
bell.
Look at the bell, and it looks like our bell.
Yeah.
And
I'm not sure about that, Gretchen, because, I mean, maybe I misinterpreted, but it says, Charles Graves built a one-room schoolhouse with an added room for the teachers' living quarters. That was in 1908. And then the house was located at 35th Street West on his property. It's reported that Kern County, and this is quoting from the book, it's reported that Kern County built a schoolhouse on the site of the present Rosamond Elementary School in 1910.
Okay,
In
that-
order to keep the school going,
Then
Charles
that,
and Cordia
this may be
sent
the
James.
one from 1910.
I'm-
There's another view of another schoolhouse
Those are
maybe.
Rosamond Hills, right there, the old base is.
Is that the same school?
Yeah,
that
it
the
is.
same school.
Yes, so this is the one that but this says the information that I had here was at the site of Rosamond Elementary,
Okay.
1960.
Well, that would correspond to what Janet just did.
Anyway, that could be, because often the distance you see to school, I mean, way off in the distance, and it looks like that. So it could be at the site of Rosamond Elementary.
Because that mountain looks like the Sierra Highway side, right? And that looks like our hill. Far off over here.
Far up over here.
No, I think those are the ones that are over towards the base.
Now, see, this looks to me like what is right behind our house across the
Yeah.
track.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, it's over towards the base, yeah.
Right, and then this would be
That's,
the R Hill.
yeah, that would be the part of our hill, and then it's gonna continue
Right.
on that, yeah.
Anybody have, and please, take a look through Grandma's and Grandpa's pictures and, you know,
So we can write it down, but that sure does look like the bell we had.
That's interesting, you're right, there's a bell right up there.
right. And so with this bell, then have even gone to the other school
Well, it was on that site. so
on
it
that
is-
site.
Possibly.
Chavonne,
Uh-huh,
look at the hills on the left-hand side.
right,
It almost looks like where the freeway might be.
Exactly,
right.
I agree.
I don't know, and these hills look like maybe to the right, kind of like, I think kind of like the one on 15th Street a little bit.
Right.
Towards the base a little,
Yeah.
I mean, a little
Right,
further
I
west.
totally
I
agree
agree.
with you, yeah. Yeah,
Well, but I'm not a real native, but I mean, just look at the topograph, you know, it looks like the current Rosamond Elementary site.
yeah,
I
so,
could be
you
wrong.
know,
And there it is again, yeah.
yeah. And yet, if you look right here, now that looks like the outhouse that was
Yeah.
back before.
That's the outhouse.
And so,
Like sitting on the top of the swing.
Sandy, you would have got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you totally
There
did.
was something interesting about that picture too. I called it a swing set, that's what I thought it was. And I couldn't actually see a swing that you could sit on. It looked like it was all those rings. When I looked,
okay.
I'm not sure where all the kids are standing over to the far side, but
Yeah,
it
it does
looks
look
like
like all
mostly
the
rings.
rings, yeah.
Well, I thought.
Yeah, and here's a little guy standing on a stump. Oh. So, you know, so we have the unsolved mystery, we've added to the mystery. You know, so that's what we have. We would love, love, love to have you, put together, you know, a quick, a game, the rules that you had, a jump rope rhyme, anything like that, we would sure love to have and be able to put together for teachers and that kind of thing.
We definitely need a little more collaboration and a little more information. So if you know anybody that can help us straighten all this out, because,
Well, we got a lot tonight.
Yes, thank you so much.
yes.
Well, he went to school there up until what, sixth grade? Eighth grade.
Eighth grade.
He said that they used to come back to he lived on Diamond Street, back home did you live on Diamond Street? Yeah. Yeah, to have lunch and then go back. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Right? Good memories, I guess.
You need to write some of this down. Honestly,
And
do.
if you have pictures from this time,
Well, Teresa Nace, the one you were talking about, the tree, that was his cousin or something, right? Cousin, that died, just like you said, of appendix. We still have the little swing that she had, right? The little things, yeah.
What I remember about her is what a great gymnast that she was. Oh, yeah, she could do flips and spins. She could do, oh.
See, those are things you.
And she was young, I know, but that's what I remember.
just this gentleman.
did.
Was there anybody in town that lived through the earthquake? I'm so sorry, I forgot your name.
1972.
Oh, John Nace.
John, okay. What?
Down in, Emmett.
No, in Rosamond or in Tehachapi.
Doing little flips.
You felt it down there, all the way to Emmett? Wow, it wasn't big. It was.
Right?
I was thinking, the pictures you have here, one person, there was no, Cliff's dad was on the original school board. He's the one who helped start the Rosamond schools, according to the book and stuff. And if anyone would know maybe where the site is that I can think of right now, that's alive, it'd be Cliff, maybe, if you can take the picture to him. And he might recall a little bit about it.
You're right, you're right.
Because
Good point, yeah.
he was active in the community, until his dad's died.
Yeah, about
He was
1930s.
active in the
That, the oldest school they showed.
And Ann, I'm gonna harp on you guys, because when you're all cackling like a bunch of hens, and we've got them recording for YouTube, the only thing we get is a bunch of cackling.
But,
And we want to encourage John Joyce and the Rosamond newspaper to record, and we really, really appreciate that, because you're allowing us to put those on YouTube, and allowing us to have that access and that shared history, so thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So much.
Thank